This happened over 20 years ago. I was driving back home with my girlfriend at the time. It was Christmas Eve, and my mother's family used to hold a large celebration at my aunt's house in Estacada. This was my girlfriend's first time meeting my extended family, but she got on quite well with them. We spent the majority of the afternoon and evening talking, playing poker, opening presents, and drinking an assortment of adult beverages. My girlfriend had been quite inebriated by the time we had to leave. Therefore, I'd be driving us home. It was around 11 p.m. or so. I was driving my girlfriend's car along Highway 211. Now, this stretch of road is surrounded by farms and dense patches of forest, and parts of it are unlit. But nothing to fear, I grew up in this area, so I knew this road like the back of my hand. The both of us were just driving and talking away, just two young lovers making the most of our moment together. There is a portion of the highway that descends down an enormous hill before crossing Deep Creek. Surrounding both sides of the road are thick forests. There are no lights. The only thing we could see was the area directly in front of our headlights. I drove down the hill, crossed the bridge, and uphill through more forest. It's as the highway starts to flatten out that it happens. Something springs across the road so suddenly that I almost hit whatever it was. I slam on the brakes. I turned to my girlfriend and asked her if she saw it. She confirmed that she had, but she couldn't make out what it was either. Maybe it was a coyote, as they are a fairly common sight in this area. But something felt off about it. Whatever it was that ran in front of the car disappeared into the woods next to the road. Coyotes don't usually just dart out in front of cars. Not like that, anyway. So, for some reason, I decided to check it out. I turned the car around and switched on the high beams to better light up the forest in which this thing had vanished in. I step out of the car and walk towards the woods. I don't see anything, but now it feels perhaps I'd made a grave error. My heart is pounding and the hairs on the back of my neck are standing at full attention. But I still don't see anything unusual in the trees. Suddenly, the car's horns blast. It's not a that you'd get if, say, your driver or passenger wanted you to hurry up and get in the car. No, this was a long, blaring. I walked back into the car and asked my girlfriend why she leaned on the horn like that. She said nothing. Instead, she pointed to a spot about 50 feet from where I was standing. I looked over in that direction, and that's when I saw it. Surely, this was the thing that ran in front of our car. It was a man. He was completely naked. His skin was covered in dirt and mud, and in one of his hands, he was holding a hatchet. He looked back at us, and then he smiled and waved to us just before turning around and walking back into the forest. Needless to say, we got the hell out of there. Once we were safely driving again, my girlfriend explained what had just happened. While I was trying to look for the man in the area he initially vanished in, he circled back around and came out from another spot in the forest, beyond my car headlights. My girlfriend had seen something out of the corner of her eye, and that's when she saw him. Before she honked the horn, he was walking towards me, his hatchet raised as if making to strike me. We called the authorities once we got safely back home, but they never found anybody, or they did and just didn't tell us. But the officer we spoke to explained his theory. The man was obviously looking to ambush unsuspecting lone travelers for Lord only knows what reason. We all agreed that my girlfriend's quick thinking saved my life, as it let my potential killer know that I wasn't alone out there. I moved back into the area recently, so I now drive that highway often. no naked hatchet man sightings yet, but I can tell you that I'm definitely extra vigilant now, especially near Deep Creek. This happened to my family when I was like 11 or 12. Background: we live in a small, close-knit southwestern town. My house is pretty small, one story, and about 100 years old. Family of 4, my parents, me, and my younger brother by about 5 years. We used to leave our front door unlocked, mostly because we didn't ever think something like this could happen in our town. It was Christmas night, so we all went to bed pretty early since we're more of a Christmas Eve type of family. Me and my younger brother had each gotten $200 cash from my grandpa to help pay for summer camps as a Christmas gift, and it was sitting in my mom's desk drawer inside her very tiny office. At some point during the night, that money was stolen along with my mother's car, which was promptly crashed down the street. I was asleep on the living room couch, which is right next to our front door. Important note, our front door is loud. It's made of really old wood and is super heavy, and so it creaks almost every time you open it. Our 2 back doors were locked, so they must have come in through the front. So, basically, whoever it was must have walked within a foot of me to get inside the house. That's creepy and off-putting, but what really gets me is my mom's car. My mom keeps her car keys in her jacket pocket, which hangs inside my parents' bedroom on the wall across from their door. Again, you have to walk within a foot of my parents' bed to even get there. But even if my parents had slept through a nearby intruder, how did they know where my mom kept her keys or where she hung her jacket every night? It's not an obvious spot to put your keys, and they apparently knew exactly where to go. Even grabbing the cash from the desk drawer makes sense. A lot of people keep important stuff there. The car thing just doesn't make sense to me. Also, they crashed it right down the street, like literally into the telephone pole at the end of our street. So we figured they were probably drunk, which raises even more questions. How were they able to open our super loud door and walk right by me without me even noticing? And how were they able to steal the cash and my mom's keys right from under our noses? Both me and my mom assume that it's probably someone we know or knew, but we have no idea who. We probably never will. So, creepy Christmas robber, let's not meet. It was Christmas Eve and I was a freshman in high school. My family has been split up for some time, so normally we trade off of Christmas Day and Christmas Eve every year. And this year I had come home early from my grandparents' Christmas party while everyone else was at my aunt and uncle's celebrating at another party. When I was dropped off, my cousin offered to stay with me for a few hours, yet I declined. I thought I could watch some of my new DVDs and get some alone time in the house, which is a rarity. I had noticed an unfamiliar car parked on the street, but didn't think anything of it considering it was Christmas Eve. Probably a neighbor's relative or something. After I got inside, I locked the door, grabbed snacks, and started to settle down. I hadn't been home for more than 15 minutes when there was a knock at the door. I unlocked the door and opened it only a crack to see a man standing there. Dark hair, glasses, slightly overweight and dressed casually. He didn't look like much of a threat, but my stomach dropped. He asked, "I was wondering about the car outside. Is it for sale?" I told him I don't think so. "Is there someone here I can talk to about it?" I said, and quite stupidly I might add, "No, but you can come back another time. and shut the door and turned the lock as fast as I possibly could. He reached for the handle immediately and started pounding on the door. I heard a string of profanities and the pounding stopped. Terrified now, I was crawling on the floor to the phone, hoping he wouldn't be able to see me through one of the windows. Then I heard the noises. Our house had an open garage door, and it led through to the laundry room, where the door lock was broken and no one had bothered to fix it. Just then, I heard a man yell, and I saw the man through the window run to his car and drive off. My uncle had gotten him just in time and scared the man off. Who knows what would have happened if he hadn't made it home in time. Sadly, we didn't get the plate number and nothing ever came of it, but I'll never be home alone on a holiday again. This story takes place 4 years ago and it still haunts me to this day. It was Christmas night and my family were driving home from this fancy restaurant. I, unlike my family, wasn't tired, so the 45-minute drive seemed perpetual. On top of that, my little sister was constantly moaning about how her friend didn't get her anything for Christmas. After about 20 minutes of driving, my dad stopped at the gas station to get some cigarettes, and my sister, brother and mother all got out to pee. I stayed in the car as I had already gone before we left. Once they all left, I decided to play a few games on my phone. I looked at the car clock and saw that 10 minutes had passed, so I immediately wondered what was taking them so long. As soon as I peered out the car window, I saw a man staring at our car. The man startled me, as I didn't know how long he had been watching. What made it even more unnerving is that he had a plain blank face. No expression was shown. It was hard to make out any features, as it was pretty dark and he wasn't standing in an illuminated part of the station. He was about 5'9" and looked to be middle-aged. Once he saw me notice him, he started walking towards the car, and I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't scared. Luckily, my dad came back with the rest of the family just as the man took a couple steps. My dad apologized and told me he had been in an argument with the cashier. I didn't care, I was just glad that my dad was with me. I took another glance at the man outside, and he was still staring, but this time he had an annoyed look on his face. We drove off, and for the rest of the car ride, I couldn't stop thinking about that man. This wouldn't have been too bad if it had ended there, but it didn't. Later that night, I was watching YouTube while everyone else slept, and luckily for me, a storm was raging over us. I enjoy storms, it makes me cozy as I'm laying in bed. I put my phone down and just enjoyed the ambience. That didn't last for long, as I heard something smash into the window behind me. I lurched forward and nearly fell out of the bed. I thought a bird had just smashed into the window. I parted the blinds, and what I saw next haunted me. I saw a man standing out by my parents' car, looking up at my room. I took a closer look, and I nearly had a heart attack. It was the same man that I saw at the gas station, only this time, when our eyes met, he grinned. Being the 14-year-old I was, I did the manly thing and screamed at the top of my lungs. My dad came running down the stairs and entered my room. "Why the fuck are you screaming?" he said. I told him about the man and I explained everything that had happened. My dad grabbed a baseball bat and told me to call the police. After 10 minutes, the police turned up outside our house and found the man in our shed. He got arrested, and that was the last time I saw him. The next day, my dad inspected the house, and we found the handle of our back door had been damaged, but not completely broken. This gives me an eerie feeling, as if he actually managed to get in, he could have harmed us or possibly killed us. This happened to my mother and grandmother about 10 years ago in a cemetery in rural Scotland. Every Christmas, it's sort of a tradition that my grandmother and parents will go to a cemetery one village over and leave flowers on the grave of my great-grandparents and a couple other relatives who are buried there. It's quite a big cemetery and surrounded on one side by fields and a small wooded area, and on the other by the outskirts of a village. There's a house on that side adjacent to the cemetery, which had a pet ginger cat with a missing leg, who was always super friendly and fun to pet and talk to if you saw him. It's kind of cool there. This one year they went in the early evening, which was bordering on fully dark night skies, as is the case in Scottish winter, and it's a cold night. On this particular year, my father parks at the front gates and lets my mother and grandmother out to go drop off some flowers. I wasn't there that year. Presumably I had decided to stay in playing video games because it was chilly as hell outside. Looking back, I'd wager the main reason I wouldn't go is because it was raining, but I can't be sure if that was the night. It's a hazy memory for me that I mainly recall through it being recounted to me multiple times over the years. So anyway, they go and place flowers. Quiet night. Nobody else is there, which figures, as it's late, so they need a torch, etc. Not the ideal time to be there, but both my parents were working that night, and with Christmas a couple of days later, it was the last day they had time to go pay their respects. On the way back to the car, they're passing by an area near the main gate where the trash, dead flowers, etc. are piled up, which has a lot of bushes and hedges in front of it, concealing some of that area. Something moves in the bush. My mother and grandmother think nothing of it until it gets louder and more obviously a person trying to put the frighteners in them. Someone lurking inside the bush. They shine the torch in, which isn't so bright, but it lets them see a silhouette of someone hunched in the bush. My grandmother, easily scared but also pretty outspoken, shouts, "Nice try, John!" My father, "We can see you in there." The car's silent, so it figures he's playing a joke. It wouldn't be totally out of character. Of course, a few seconds later, the car's engine comes on as my father's turned on the ignition to use the AC. My mother and grandmother book it out of there at high speeds and dive into the car with my bewildered dad. We never really found out who was hiding in a cold cemetery at night, but there was a local legend about a deathly pale woman who wandered that village often, and the rural roads around it a lot, being generally weird and frightening. I saw her a few times, sort of a local eccentric with mental health problems. I assume it was probably her, and given my mother was terrified of her, that would have been intense if it had been confirmed on the night. It's funny how people react to fear though. My grandmother, fiercely protective 99% of the time, physically pushed in front of my mother to get out of the gate to the car.